Welcome to Top 10 Archive. After more than 125 years, the murderer known as Jack the Ripper has never been identified. Although many suspects have been linked and some have even admitted to the crimes, we will probably never know the true killer. In this video, we will look at 10 suspects who are most likely Jack the Ripper. Number 10. William Henry Barry. William Barry was hanged in April 1889, 1 year after the Ripper murders for the murder of his wife, Ellen. He was named a suspect by the New York Times newspaper due to similarities between the stab wounds he inflicted upon his wife and those found on the body of Polly Nichols, the first Ripper victim. Ellen was strangled to death, then stabbed deeply in the abdomen. The police at the time must have made certain links between Barry and the Ripper, as they sent the leading officer, Inspector Aberline, to investigate Barry. The words, "Jack the Ripper is in this cellar," were written in chalk on the door of his residence. Barry's wife was also a former prostitute. Investigators later discovered that Barry slept with a penknife under his pillow and suggested that Barry fits the FBI's psychological profile of the Ripper. However, at the time, the Metropolitan Police concluded there was insufficient evidence to process Barry as a viable suspect. Number 9. Montague John Druitt. Montague Druitt was the son of a prominent physician. He excelled at Oxford University and graduated in 1880. His body was found dead in the River Thames on December 31st, 1888, a month after the final Ripper murder. Medical examination suggested his body was at the bottom of the river for several weeks by stones placed in his pockets. A coroner's jury concluded that he had committed suicide by drowning whilst of unsound mind. His disappearance shortly after the fifth and last murder raised many questions, most notably why the well-liked and successful man would take his own life. He also showed no signs of mental illness, depression, marital or financial problems. At the time, many suggested he may have committed the murders and killed himself through fear of being identified, or simply felt guilt. There were no further murders after his death. But despite the lack of conclusive evidence, many researchers still regard Druitt as the leading Ripper suspect. Number 8. James Kelly. James Kelly murdered his wife in 1883 by way of stabbing. Deemed insane, he was committed to the Broadmoor Asylum, from which he later escaped in early 1888. After the last Ripper murder in London in November 1888, the police searched for Kelly at what had been his residence prior to his wife's murder, but they were unable to locate him. In 1927, almost 40 years after his escape, he unexpectedly turned himself in to officials at the Broadmoor Asylum. Researchers claim Kelly kept a journal in which he spoke of his strong disapproval of the immorality of prostitutes and having been on the warpath during his time as a fugitive. However, his movements after escaping Broadmoor Mental Hospital cannot be verified, and all evidence against Kelly remains inconclusive. Number 7. James Maybrick. One of the most recent additions to the suspect list, and very controversial, is a Liverpool cotton merchant, James Maybrick. He was poisoned to death by his wife Florence, who claimed he was the Ripper in 1889. In the 1990s, a diary said to be written by Maybrick, confessing the murders, was located within the walls of a house in Liverpool and published by its new occupant, Michael Barrett. Later, in 1995, Barrett confessed in great detail to writing the diary and swore under oath that he and his wife Anne had forged it. However, Anne Barrett, after their divorce, denied the forgery, and their story changed several times over the years. Oddly, some researchers claim details within the diary would only have been known by those closest to the case or the Ripper himself. Many researchers have discredited the diary as a fake and pointed out factual errors in relation to some of the crimes. Document experts have since pronounced the diary a fake. The handwriting does not match that of Maybrick's will, and the ink used in the diary contains a preservative not marketed until 1974. Despite this, there remain those who refute these assertions and maintain the diary is genuine and Maybrick was the Ripper. Number 6. Dr. Thomas Neill Cream. Thomas Cream was a doctor who carried out secret illegal backstreet abortions within the deprived areas of East London, with many customers being penniless prostitutes. He was born in Scotland, then traveled throughout the United States, Canada, and England, carrying out shady medical work. In 1881, he was responsible for poisoning several of his patients. Confessing to the crimes, he was imprisoned and then released on good behavior in 1891. Upon his release, he resumed killing and was soon rearrested. Again, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. He was hanged on November 15th of that year, and according to the executioner and others present, his last words were reported as being, "I am Jack," interpreted to mean Jack the Ripper. Despite being imprisoned at the time of the Ripper murders, some claimed that he could have bribed prison officials and left the prison before his official release. He was a convicted murderer with surgical knowledge, but there remains no conclusive evidence to prove his guilt of the Whitechapel murders. Number 5. The Royal Conspiracy. In 1973, writer Stephen Knight implicated members of the British royal family, the Prime Minister, the Freemasons, and chief police officers at Scotland Yard in what would become known as the Royal Conspiracy. He claimed that Jack the Ripper was in fact 3 men working together to kill the 5 victims who were attempting to blackmail the British royal family. It is alleged this was in order to prevent the 5 prostitutes from disclosing to the media that Prince Edward Albert Victor had secretly married and impregnated a poor young Catholic woman named Annie Crook, which would never have met the approval of the monarch and the British hierarchy. Fearing this would undermine the British public's confidence of the royal family and cause a revolution, the prince confided in the Prime Minister, Lord Salisbury, and his acquaintances, the Queen's physician, Sir William Gull, the artist, Walter Sickert, and royal carriage driver, John Netley. As such, William Gull and Walter Sickert decided all 5 women must die to prevent them from ever divulging this information. The men were prominent members within the secret society of Freemasons, and as such agreed each victim was killed according to the ancient Freemason ritual of mutilation, which included cutting a sacrifice victim from the groin to the chest and throwing their intestines over their right shoulder. This explains the injuries each received. Knight claimed the Metropolitan Police Deputy Commissioner, Sir Robert Anderson, was also a Freemason and a close friend of Gull, and conspired with them, ensuring that all evidence was destroyed. Whilst many experts refute this theory, it remains popular amongst conspiracy theorists to this day. Number 4. Walter Sickert. Whilst the royal conspiracy claimed the artist Walter Sickert was the murderer along with Dr. William Gull, and the pair were transported to and from the murder scenes by a third man, carriage driver John Netley, he is also accused of murdering the 5 victims on his own. Author Patricia Cornwell caused controversy in December 2001 when she announced she was 100% positive Sickert was the murderer, claiming his confessions lie within his paintings. Writer Stephen Knight had also claimed Sickert had deliberately based his work on the murders, including a painting entitled La Hollandaise, believed to be the final victim, Marie Kelly, as well as a series of paintings called the Camden Town Murders, which his accusers believe are based on the Ripper murders. It is widely agreed this theory is inconclusive at best. Number 3. George Chapman. No relation to the Ripper's victim, Annie Chapman, he was born Severin Kosowski in Poland, but traveled to the United Kingdom in 1887 and lived in Whitechapel at the time of the murders. He assumed the name of Chapman. A fraudster who used several aliases, he was guilty of successively poisoning 3 of his wives and was hanged in 1903. Considered by some experts to be the most likely killer, he is said to have had the medical skills needed to commit the mutilations. However, the level of medical skill necessary remains debated to this day. Those who refute Chapman as a suspect argue that while he was a murderer, it is very uncommon for a serial killer to make such a drastic change in modus operandi. Number 2. Francis Tumblety. Francis Tumblety was an Irish-American con man who earned a fortune posing as a doctor and traveled across the United States and Europe. Known to be in London throughout the time of the Ripper murders, he was arrested for alleged gross indecency and had extensive knowledge of the area where the murders had occurred. Not only did he have a severe hatred of women, but the bogus doctor had a collection of uteruses and had the anatomical knowledge shown by the Ripper. Scotland Yard named Tumblety as a very likely suspect, and on becoming aware of this, he fled London in November 1888 to evade arrest, after which there were no further Ripper murders. Later traced to New York City, he again managed to evade police, and his whereabouts after that remain unknown. Some of the most widely respected researchers have declared their belief that Tumblety was the Ripper, although this cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Number 1. Aaron Kominski. Kominski was a 23-year-old Polish Jew who immigrated to Whitechapel shortly before the 1888 Ripper murders. In 1891, he was certified insane and committed to Conley Hatch Lunatic Asylum. He was first named as a suspect in Chief Constable Melville McNaughton's memo to the Home Office, which stated there were strong reasons for suspecting him. Known to have had a great hatred of women, with strong homicidal tendencies, he strongly resembled a man who ran from a police constable near the scene of the murders. FBI criminal profilers would later claim he met the criteria in the profile of serial killers and had the capability to commit the murders. Researchers also established that Kominski lived within a mile of the murder scenes. Above all, on September 7, 2014, a longtime Ripper researcher claimed to have proven Kominski was the Ripper, having successfully matched DNA recovered from a blood-stained shawl found upon one of the victims to the DNA of a descendant of Kominski. The owner of the blood-stained shawl, Russell Edwards, has told the media, "This is it now. We have unmasked him." Those who dispute this evidence claim that while it places Kominski at one of the crime scenes, it does not give evidence for his responsibility for the other 4 murders. However, most agree this may be the closest we will ever come to solving one of the biggest questions in the world's criminal history. Who was Jack the Ripper? Like these top 10 videos? Subscribe by clicking the annotation here and give our video a like. Have an idea for a future top 10? Leave a comment in the section below.